Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you to the month of October. This is the month where the dying light of all that has come before us has started to fade, and though we may live in an age where men pray for the extinction of all things we know now, there will also be just as many on their knees praying for the dawn to come back. And I didn't quote that from anything, that's just something I just literally came up with at the top of my head because it kind of felt nice and a bit important to say. And usually, whenever we get to the first of any month, it's good to start with something very hopeful. It's good to start with something optimistic, something very inspiring, something that might indeed give us something indeed to cherish and to think over. For so many times in life, ladies and gentlemen, we play for many, many things. We play that we do well in life so that we earn money, so that we can have a nice life for ourselves, that we can afford to buy the things we need and the things we want. We also sometimes play for life for the aspects of glory. Some of us are not in it for the money. Some of us are just doing it so we can go down in history as great people who have done great things. It might be even possible to say that so many of us will never actually get to be in that position because sometimes in life, like, pardon for my throat, by the way, it's just a refluxing condition that sometimes I just like have to really get something out of the back of my throat. But one thing I can certainly inspire a lot of people in this day and age is that just over a year ago, I was in a very, very interesting predicament where I kind of really had to face facts that unless I actually did something extremely impressive or started to do things that were extremely impressive, then we would simply be spinning our wheels and life would go on, but we would be going absolutely nowhere. And one of the most important things that one of the most, well, certainly as I've grown older, is the fact that whether I like it or not, if I do nothing, then my whole life will simply come to nothing. And that's maybe like the first big step I want to sort of like, because really this sort of video isn't really necessarily anything to do with politics or the news, but it's to do with the fact that actually whether people really want to believe it or whether some people want to make sure other people do not believe it as much as possible, remember, Abraham Lincoln was only one man, but what a man he was. And bear this in mind, you may be only one person, but what a person you are. And in that sense, ladies and gentlemen, it is also very crucial in reminding each and every one of us just how much we can all achieve just through our own initiative and hard graft. We are not in this alone, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually one of the more pristine and more optimistic views towards socialism, for example, that if you take the world as being basically one giant boat, and let's say there were about 20 people on board this boat, and if everybody did their own fair share of the work, then they will receive their own fair share. It seems, to be honest, it's sort of the view towards socialism that I've had for many, many years, and I did promise that this was not going to really be involving politics, but the more ideological, more optimistic view towards all this is the message in: if we all work hard, if we all help each other out, if we all go that extra mile, we will be rewarded, or rather, the expectation is to be rewarded. For it's also very fatal to come to the realization that so many of us will not be in such a very fine position, the fine position in which so many of us won't actually see the benefits of the work that we do, not because we don't think our work is of any use or is valid for any reason, but it's also a key reminder that actually there's so much that goes on in life that people will work themselves almost to death and they won't even have the common courtesy to even attend their own funeral without having been called from the boss saying they were being fired. I'm sure anybody who's ever worked for Sports Direct and knows of the very harsh secrets behind there will certainly attend to this. But what I want everyone to understand is that we are now in the final quarter of 2023, And this year has been one of great discovery, great achievement, great education, great knowledge, great foresight into perhaps some of the disasters that are going to come. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most important things you could ever learn about history is the fact that if you really want to know how we got here, you must learn how we got here, which is all about learning about exactly what happens in the past, which will lead us to how we get into the future, and then what even lies beyond the future. Remember, the future hasn't happened yet, but very soon the future will become the present, and by then the present will be filled with people who look back into the past, decide what works, and then we say, maybe we should try this again, and then history repeats itself. Or, better still, there will simply be more history. To be honest, it's one of the great reasons why my dad was very, very keen for me to study history as he did, because there was just so much about our history and the history of the world that we could all learn from in terms of why we shouldn't be people like Joseph Stalin or Adolf Hitler, or hell, even Winston Churchill for that matter. But there were also quite a lot of people we could look towards and to see as pillars of humanity. And what I mean by pillars of humanity are the people who stood for their rights, the people who stood for the decency to be treated as equal human beings. Nelson Mandela is just about one of the most superb examples of this because, again, he fought for his cause. He was imprisoned for 21 years for his cause. He rose to the rank of presidency, and on December 5th of this year, we will be reminding of the fact that it would have been a whole 10 years since Nelson Mandela died. And I remember where I was when I heard that Nelson Mandela had died. I was just in school during, it was either a maths or an English lesson, and then I heard through some like word of mouth or whatever from a few minutes later that heard that Nelson Mandela had died. And yeah, and I remember like studying a little bit about Mandela when I was about like 13, so it would have been just 2 years before he passed. And I wouldn't even be reminisced about going back once again and learning a bit more about him. In fact, there's so many people in history that I've yet to really go over. And I'm not just talking about men like Mandela. We're talking about perhaps all the way back to, let's say, Ramses II or Henry II, or that there are so many people out there that just kind of are worth their due about why they are recorded in history. Because yes, I would like to imagine the only reason why some people are like recorded in history is just because they happen to be in like the right position at the right time. King Stephen, for example, which I believe was directly King Stephen, I think, was either directly after William the Conqueror or immediately after King John. I'm not 100% certain about that, but there's got to be a reason as to that sort of thing, because I think Stephen. Okay, let me see if I can remember this. Okay, the Doomsday Book was William the First, so it would have been, let's say, late 11th century. So I think the Doomsday Book was about maybe 1076, perhaps. Because the problem is that I have no real reference in terms of how long William the Conqueror was King of England before his death, because I know it obviously it would have to been in 1066. So, and again, I'm just kind of like trying to remind myself a little bit about how when he died, and was the Doomsday Book even during William the Conqueror at all? It might have been during King John, for example. It might be. Again, this is the last time I ever went as far back as that is history, when I was only 11 years old when I started learning about, well, the age of the Normans and stuff like that. But to be honest, I kind of almost wanted to go even before even that. So we're talking like Alexander the Great, Alfred the Great, and maybe a little bit more about like European history as well. I mean, who was like knocking about in Prussia during the 11th century? Was it even called Prussia at this point? Who was like, for example, like who was the Holy Roman Emperor during during 1066, or who was ruler of Italy by that point? Because I know, yeah, it's fascinating as well. It just, I don't know if this just highlights my blatant ignorance, or rather it more highlights a level of enthusiasm, because it is an interesting balance between like ignorance and enthusiasm, because you could get a lot of things wrong, but it doesn't in any way prevent you from showcasing that you try to make a link somewhere. So it's just a matter of like just getting a book, learning a little bit from it, and then you'll start to get some of the facts right, because dates and timings is actually something I can get pretty right, all things considered. Hell, I mean, how many people will be able to say what day Nelson Mandela died? Well, I'll just say it again, 5th of December 2013. And what I want to get you guys to understand is something I'm going to emphasize again when November. Oh my God, November is only a month away. Oh my God. But I'm going to explain. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it here. I'm going to explain to all of you guys why November is perhaps my favorite month of the year. And I kind of wanted to save this sort of discussion for another 2 years, because it was one of the most important moments in my life. But because it's that important, I feel like I just want to say it right here. So, God, man, I'm getting like teary-eyed just talking about it, and we haven't even started it. Okay, so basically, I'm just going to give you basically the Cliff Notes version of it. Is that one day, I think it was either November 3rd or November 4th, I just sat on my computer, because the computer we used to have was downstairs, and I was just like faced with the problem of just, all right, you know what, let's just get this over with. I was doing some like work, doing some photography work, and I just thought, because I was not particularly very keen on this course anyway, but the point was that I just like, all right, okay, and then before I knew it, I'd done like a whole page in roughly about 10 minutes, and then I thought to myself, oh, actually, you know what I just write there, that wasn't even too bad. And then I just did it, and then I printed it out, I got it involved, and then I was like, oh, you know what, yeah, let's just do another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. And before I knew it, I literally did 6 pages in literally like 90 minutes. And I got all the pages like stuck in. Bloody flies. So I did all that in such a short span of time, and then I got into school the next day, and I was like, maybe I should just do some stuff on Photoshop, and I did like 15 different photos, all edited through Photoshop, did some really cool edits with them, and then I got in, I stuck them all in, and I was like, it was like that moment that was like my eureka moment right there, where all of a sudden there was like this new spark of life, this wave of enthusiasm had just sort of finally clicked with me in the back of my mind, and I was working harder than ever before, with not just with my photography, but with my fine art and with my English literature. And I wish that and I basically continued with that all throughout my last year at school. I just felt like, for some strange reason, I was working harder, I was happier in my work, I was doing like so much, and I loved every second of it. I would sometimes I would work like all throughout the afternoon on a Friday at school and stuff like that, and I would come away smiling just as much because I got so much done, and I was happy because I took pride, I had of accomplishment in my work. And again, I've said this before, but some people don't have that satisfaction, because sometimes the things they hate the things that they do sometimes. And I was going into this just thinking in the back of my mind, I loved it. And again, I continued this wave all throughout school, and I just, that's why I look forward to like November every single year that comes up, because it's almost like a call to like rebirth the flame that happened once before. And it's only until like recently where I thought to myself, maybe if I just straight up made every month like November, then that means that I could work harder, I can enjoy what I do, and you don't need to wait for a specific month. You just have to get on with it. And that's kind of like what, and you know what, the most important thing is that it came from in here. All that enthusiasm, all that love, all that passion, it came from inside. That was what was most important. The fact that I took it upon myself I was responsible enough to care about what I was doing. And that's kind of like also what I want to close this video out by showcasing to you guys, that if you can prove that you're responsible enough to care about the things you do, then you will get so much more out of life than you could possibly imagine. And don't let current events, the news, the incompetency of our government, like politics, you know the score. Don't let any of those things drag you down to oblivion, because the papers can't make you feel certain. Whenever anybody or anything ever tries to tell you what you can and cannot feel, then they are your enemy. But I'll tell you who your friends are, ladies and gentlemen. I will tell you who your friends are. Your friends are the people that you want to have close. Forget keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Keep your friends closer and keep your enemies far away. Don't let the evils of the rest of the world cloud your judgment, ladies and gentlemen. Just use them as reminders of what we're doing all of this for. Thanks for listening. I will look forward to seeing all of you guys again all throughout October, and I can't wait to hear what you got to say all the way throughout October. Apparently it's called UK History Month as well, so maybe this could be a month of study. Maybe this could be a month of history, so watch this space.